classic Fred Fowle work. In early 1965, Tom Smith took delivery of undoubtedly his finest machine of all, a brand new Lightning skid from Hayes Fabrications, seen here when new at Airfield in 1965. Echoes of the golden age of Leighton's work was much in evidence. This was one of some half-dozen swirls turned out by Hayes Fabrications in the mid-1960s. This one was the most magnificent of them all. Look at the sweep of the wide, deep front boards. Again, Fred Fowle was the master painter for this great machine. Look at the richness of the work here. It was the same story all round the ride. Fairground decor at its finest. The 8 cars erupted with colour and excitement. 4 of them had the firm's name emblazoned in gold leaf. The 4 alternate ones proclaimed Skid in pyjama striped letters. The paybox was handsomely adorned and partly hidden by 4 massive Carlsberg disco loudspeakers. Okay, all you transport enthusiasts out there, you've not been forgotten, because now we'll show you some of the fascinating vehicles which T. Smith & Sons used to carry their fare across the highways and byways of Hertfordshire and elsewhere. Here we see the Dodgem and Dark loads pulling on to Pinner Fair in the 1960s. This view, taken at Aylesbury in 1962, shows the packing trucks to the Dodgem and the Noah's Ark. Here's a real showman's box truck of the period, complete with high greedy boards, and on top holding a selection of old water tanks used for packing under the machines. In the 1950s and early 60s, Smiths had some vintage tractors, including this Albion ex-World War II heavy artillery, here working with the Dodgems and given Fleet Number 1. Standing beside the Albion here is another tractor, Fleet Number 3, a smart ERF with characteristic curved skirting boards on the back, seen at Aylesbury in 1962. By 1964, this smart little Scammell had joined the fleet, caught here at Dunstable in September that year. Another Scammell was put into service in 1970 with the Ark. Here it is pulling the Ark loads into the High Street at Pinner in June 1973. This trusty Matador gave many years of service to the firm and outlasted all the other tractors we've seen on the road, and was still with them in the early 1980s. Here we see it at Sarratt Mayfair in 1979, England's biggest village fair. It carries a crane on the front for lifting the swirl motor and heavy gearing. So what carried the big rides? Let's look at the Dodgem first. This Foden FG carried the floor of the track in the early 1960s. The rest of the ride packed onto frame trucks like this one. By 1969, the big Foden was gone and the floor was carried on a Leyland Octopus 8-wheeler, seen here unloading at Pinner in 1973. The early 70s saw this handsome AEC Mammoth Major with a tail lift on the back, carrying the cars and nets and pulling a fresh box truck. That box truck was smartly lettered, as you can see here. Another newer Mammoth Major was commissioned in 1978 for the Dodgem floor, seen here pulling onto Pinner High Street. Turning to the Noah's Ark, drawbar trucks predominated during its travelling days, The centre truck we've already seen. This is the frame truck for the platforms and superstructure. There was also this handsome lettered box truck for the animals, seen here at Aylesbury in 1962. When the Octopus came, it was carried on this ERF 8-wheel frame lorry. By 1975, the machine was being carried on this AEC Mammoth Major, onto which the frame body had been fitted. The swirl was carried as 3 loads. This Leyland Octopus 8-wheeler carried the floor and the ceilings. The cars and superstructure were accommodated on this frame truck. A box truck carried all of the scenery and other decorative parts. By 1973, the Leyland had been replaced by this smart AEC Mammoth Major. Here is a splendid view of the whole fleet lined up as it was in the early 1970s. It's all here. 3 Mammoth Majors, a Leyland, 2 Scamell tractors and the trusty old Matador. And how long is it since you saw one of these? It's an Austin Gypsy, which was with the firm for light duties in 1981. And so we conclude our journey back through time. Let us now go to Gerry Cottle's yard in Addlestone, where he's getting his prize collection of rides ready for their historic journey to Wembley, where they will join the circus to present the greatest show on earth. now going to witness the build-up of the Dodgems and the Swirl in the Wembley Exhibition Centre. Albert Smith and his two sons are helping to build up the Dodgems. Meanwhile, Tom Smith and his son Tom are working on the build-up of the Skid. So let's sit back and watch these historic operations in progress.